Welcome everyone to the number one Raiders podcast in the world. My name is Steven Michaels. This is the Raiders Daily Podcast. We have a Christmas miracle. The Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders, are still alive in the playoff race as they sweep the Denver Broncos. They beat Drew Lock and the Denver Broncos in a game which, let's face it, was a playoff game, and the rest of the games for the Raiders, the last two games, are playoff games. The Raiders pretty much have to win out to make the playoffs and still need a little bit of help. There's these mathematical chances Raiders can get into the playoffs if they lose against the Colts, but that requires, I believe, the Bills losing 2 games in a row and a whole bunch of, it's just a big mess. The best way to get in is to win. And that's exactly what they did on Sunday, yesterday, against the Denver Broncos. The Raiders, who do not play well in Las Vegas for some strange reason, ended up winning this game 17-13. Now, this is a game where I felt the Raiders really were a better team and could have blown out the Denver Broncos like they did the first time they played, but they did not do it this time, mostly because of turnovers. The Raiders shot themselves in the foot a lot in this game with turnovers. They had 3 turnovers on the game. 3! They had 2 fumbles, and Derek Carr threw some dumbass interception. 3 turnovers and somehow the Raiders win. The reason why they won this game, simple. Very, very simple. Now, those turnovers, if you just look at that, you say, wow, well, the Raiders must have lost. But, look at everything else. Total yards, the Denver Broncos get 158 compared to the Raiders with 342. And what do the Raiders want to do every game? They talk about this in meetings. They feel like if they can control time of possession and run the ball, they can win every game. And they did that in this game. Raiders were 36 minutes and 37 seconds compared to the Denver Broncos, who just had 23 minutes and 23 seconds of time of possession. And of course, the biggest one of all, third downs. Now, the Raiders went 6 for 12. I wish they would do a little better than that, but still, the Broncos were 1 for 10. And when you are 1 for 10 on first downs, and on first downs, the Raiders get 22 first downs and the Broncos only get 8, well, that's a recipe for a victory for the Las Vegas Raiders. And they didn't have a ton of penalties. They had 3 penalties, the same amount the Broncos had. So they played a pretty much clean game. Like I said, besides the turnovers, which you can't do that. They got away with that because they were playing against Drew Lock and the Denver Broncos. Next week, they're playing against arguably the best team in the NFL right now in the Indianapolis Colts. They are on fire. If the Raiders have 3 turnovers in that game, I don't think the Raiders are going to win. But they have to figure something out, but they needed to take care of this game first. They were tied with the Denver Broncos. They were standing right in their way. The Raiders needed a victory here to stay alive, and they did just that. Now with 2 games remaining, can the Raiders run the table and make the playoffs? It's going to be very interesting. A lot of things went the Raiders' way yesterday. The Bengals ended up beating the Baltimore Ravens, which helped the Raiders. Which did not help the Raiders was the Patriots. The Patriots, they could have helped the Raiders twice already, and they failed to do so. I hate the Patriots so much. Even when I want the Patriots to win, you know what I mean? Like, I'm rooting for them to win, which I never do. They lose. They are just a terrible franchise, to be honest with you. if they would have just beaten the Bills, it would have helped out the Raiders so much, but they, of course, didn't want to do that. And because the Patriots are highly overrated, they had a string of very easy games, in my opinion, and then once they started playing teams that are a little bit better, they get exposed. That's what we've been seeing now for, a couple weeks now. So, with that being said, the Raiders are still in the mix, and next week, pretty much mark it down as a playoff game, just like Sunday, but this is even bigger. I would say this is almost like the AFC Championship game. And then week 18 is pretty much the Super Bowl. And then after that, if the Raiders actually, we'll play make-believe here. If they can actually win these two games, then they get into the real playoffs. Something we don't know much about. I've been covering this team for a long time, right? And I've seen them go to the playoffs once covering this team, and that was a fluke season, the 2016 season. I know a lot of fans point to that season like it was some kind of... It was a fluke, we all know that. But anyways, they haven't been consistently good. If somehow this team, right, with everything they've been through, if they can get to the playoffs, if they can beat the Indianapolis Colts and then beat the LA Chargers and make it into the playoffs and win one playoff game, I will be in favor of giving Derek Carr a contract extension. Only for a couple of years. I still wouldn't, just not look at that position in the draft and free agency and things like that. But if he can do that, then I think he deserves it. But he's got to be consistent. This is a guy, I'm really nervous about this Colts game just because the Raiders just won 2 games in a row. Usually, Derek Carr will win 2 in a row and then just lose 4 in a row. That's been his whole career. But now, the whole world's watching him. The ownership is watching him. The franchise is watching him. They want to see how he plays these last 2 games. They want to see if this guy can bring his team to the playoffs. He is the quarterback. You know what I mean? So throw everyone else out the window. I know Derek Carr has these diehard fans that think he does nothing wrong, and then there's fans that I guess people say hate Derek Carr. I don't believe that. Either way, he's a quarterback that got paid a whole bunch of money, and you guys deserve to be in the playoffs. This guy needs to lead this team into the playoffs. And don't give me he has no weapons, because Foster Monroe is a pretty damn good tight end. Deshaun Jackson is pretty damn good if you get him the football. Zay Jones has shown that he can do some things if you get him the ball, and you got Hunter Renfrow, and there is a small chance that Darren Waller plays against the Colts. If he doesn't play against the Colts, let's say they can't get up to speed and he can't do it, he possibly, more than likely, will play against the Chargers. Now, if the Raiders lose against the Colts, there's no point of playing Darren Waller. The season's over. So, we shall see. It's going to be a tough matchup. I'll tell you that. Because the Colts, like I said, they've been playing lights out, this team. The Indianapolis Colts, I've been watching, and I just got done watching, all these. They're playing better than pretty much anyone right now. They really are. They are playing very good football. They beat the Arizona Cardinals. That was their last game they played. They beat them, I believe it was 22-16, I believe. Then before that, they beat the New England Patriots, 27-17. Before that, they destroyed the Houston Texans. I'll get into them in 1 second. 31-0. Before that, they did lose against Tampa Bay, which was a very close game, 31-38. Before that, they beat Buffalo. They destroyed Buffalo. They beat Jacksonville. They beat the Jets. They lost against Tennessee in overtime. They won against the 49ers. They won against the Texans. They lost in overtime. That's why this game is so big, by the way. To the Baltimore Ravens. They have been playing really good. After starting out not very good at all, this team is playing. I mean, I believe they were 0-3 to start the season. I believe. I could be wrong, but I believe they were. They are playing very high level football right now. Now, also, I want to get back to the Texans. Yesterday, the Raiders got another little mini miracle as the Houston Texans defeat the LA Chargers. I mean, that helped out the Raiders big time. Now, this week, the Chargers will go up against the Denver Broncos. You are going to want the Denver Broncos to pull off the upset. You're going to want that. You're also going to want, the Rams to beat the Ravens. And then you're going to want the Chiefs to beat the Bengals. And then you're going to want, you got a whole lot of things going on. Then you're going to want the Bengals to beat, in Week 18, the Bengals to beat Cleveland. And then, it's a whole big thing. If you need a lot of things to happen, especially if the Raiders lose against the Colts. But I don't want to get you guys all confused. Basically, Raiders got to take care of their own business. If they can win these next 2 games, I believe they get in. I believe everything else falls into place. I know, they need a few. It would be, they need the Ravens to lose one. They need a few things to happen. But yesterday, that Chargers loss did wonders for the Raiders. Because I believe the Raiders, all they have to do is run the table, and I believe they get in. I believe they get in because of that loss. Now, if Chargers would have beaten the Broncos, then we're talking about what else needs to happen. Nothing else needs to happen right now. The Raiders just need to beat the Colts, and they need to beat the Chargers. If they can do that, they will be in the playoffs for the first time since 2016. And guess what? It won't be, what's his name there? Connor Cook as your quarterback. You'll have a starting quarterback unless he gets injured, and Derek Carr, and then we can see what he can do in the playoffs, right? Now, we're not, obviously, this isn't a team we think is going to win a Super Bowl, but to win one playoff game would be nice, right? To win one. Just one. But let's get there first. And like I said, they're playing against, in my opinion, the best team in football right now in the Indianapolis Colts. And they're going to have to do it on the road in Indy. Now, the other big storyline that's coming out of this game is all the guys on COVID. And the Raiders sure have a lot of guys on COVID of their own, okay? Let's just go over the list real quick for the Raiders. The Colts have a ton of guys on COVID too, by the way. A ton. But this list is not good for the Raiders. Denzel Perryman. These are all guys who have tested positive for COVID who are in danger of not playing against the Indianapolis Colts. Denzel Perryman. Casey Hayward Jr. This guy's been playing phenomenal. The Raiders, they need him on the field. KJ Wright. Corey Littleton. All their linebackers pretty much. Darius Philon, who's been playing really good. Brian Edwards, Marcus Mariota, Roger Teamer, Brandon Faison. I mean, they have so many guys on the COVID list, and I heard that list could even grow. I mean, that is insane, guys. That is insane. Now, the Colts, like I said, they have their own share of guys on COVID. They have their safety, what's his name? Day, I can't even remember his name. But you know what I'm talking about. Their safety, TJ Carey, remember him? He's on there. Malik Jefferson, Marlon Mack, their tackle, Brendan Smith. They're all on the COVID list. And the Indianapolis Colts, they are not 100% vaccinated like the Raiders. I heard they're not even at the 70% threshold of being vaccinated. They're more to the 65% or in the 60s. They're not at the 70% rate yet of players being vaccinated. So, something to keep your eyes out for. Hopefully, it's the Colts that have more COVID cases than the Raiders when this game starts. Now, we don't know what's going to happen. If these both teams' lists start growing like crazy, do they change the game to a different date like they did with the Browns? We don't know yet. What we do know is the Colts and the Raiders both know that this, without a shadow of a doubt, it may not be called the playoffs, it may not have that graphic in the corner, but this is a playoff game. Loser goes home, winner advances to the next round, which is week 18, the extra week of the season, where the Raiders must beat the LA Chargers, but before they get there, they have to beat the Indianapolis Colts. Now, if the Raiders can pull off that miracle, maybe with the momentum, they can beat the Chargers, but right now, they got to make sure they can get some guys healthy. Now, as far as the COVID thing goes, the Raider players who are vaccinated, they only need one negative test. That's it. Remember, today's Monday. They don't play, until Sunday. So they got a lot of time here. All they need is one negative test. Just one. So here's the hoping the Raiders can get some guys off that COVID list and play in this game, especially guys like Perryman and Casey Hayward Jr. You really need those guys. You really do. I mean, their defense is what won them the game against Denver. It wasn't their offense. I can tell you that right now. They only scored 17 points. They were held scoreless in the first quarter. They scored one touchdown in the second quarter, one touchdown in the third quarter, and they kicked a field goal in the fourth quarter. They didn't do much. They really didn't. But they won the game. Derek Carr was 20 for 25, 201 yards, one touchdown pass, and one interception, which was the dumbest interception in the world. They pretty much let the Broncos hang around in this game. Drew Lock was 15 for 22 for 153 yards, and Josh Jacobs, who, man, this guy's got to hold on to the football. But either way, he went over 100 yards finally. 27 carries, 129 yards. The Broncos, by the way, no run game at all. No run game. Williams, 7 carries, 12 yards. That was their leading rusher. And I'm not making that up. That was their leading rusher. By the way, Foster Monroe, for the Raiders, he had the most yards out of everyone. So that's something that, like I said, I said in the last show, Foster Monroe, in my opinion, is really good. I know he had those drops a couple of weeks ago and he didn't look good, but this guy can be a really good tight end. He had 4 catches, 67 yards. He had a long one for 28. He also iced the game with that catch at the end. Zay Jones, I think he played pretty well in this game. Had 6 catches, 50 yards. Deshaun Jackson, 4 catches, 44 yards. Hunter Renfrow. When Derek Carr doesn't just look for Hunter Renfrow every single play, when he scopes the field and looks at his other options, he plays better. The ball gets spread around better, and they look better. And that's what he did here. He threw to different guys. He didn't just stick to one guy throwing the football. But anyways, Hunter Renfrow had 3 catches for 40 yards. He had 3 targets. Jackson had 5 targets. Jones had 8. Foster Monroe had 4. Also, Jalen Richard had a catch. Peyton Barber and Josh Jacobs. But either way, when you spread the ball around, good things happen. I want to see more of that from Derek Carr. But, we're talking about a guy who's in year 8, not in year 1 or 2. That's what bothers me about him, is being consistent. Because imagine, I don't care if you're the biggest Derek Carr fan in the world and you call me a hater at the 8, and when you're 65 years old, stop using the word hater. I cover the team and I analyze the games. I just tell the truth. That's all I do. I break down the game and I tell you who played well and who played bad and what the Raiders can do to be better. And right now, I'm telling you, the problem with Derek Carr is he's not consistent. If Derek Carr was consistent, let's say he played I'm trying to think of a really good game he had. He had a good game against the Ravens, I believe, to start out the year. He had a good game against the Eagles, if you remember, against the Broncos when I first played him. Imagine if he played like that every game, He would be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. The problem is he has like 2 good games and then has like 4 crappy games, has 1 great game, then they lose 2 times in a row, then they win 2 times in a row, then they lose 4 times. He's too erratic. If he could just be consistent, there would be no criticism. There wouldn't be rumors every year the Raiders were shopping him. They wouldn't be asking what his market value is. No one would, because they would have a top 5 quarterback on their team. He just has to be consistent. That's all. And not make stupid decisions. If he could just not do that, that's what drives me crazy about this guy. He could be one of the best in the NFL. But, you know what? This week, he is going into Indianapolis to face one of the best teams in the NFL. Let's see what Derek Carr is made of. Let's see if he can win in an Indy. And let's see if he can follow that up and be consistent and beat the LA Chargers and send the Raiders to the playoffs. Let's see if Derek Carr can do it. If he does, then he deserves an extension, in my opinion. If he could do that, even though he has some crappy games this year, if he can redeem himself and win these last 4 games, then I would give him one. I really would. I wouldn't stop, looking around, because you always want an upgrade. And plus, the guy would be in year 9. So, but still, I would give him that 2-3 year extension. I really would. You can give him a 4-year extension. It doesn't really matter. After 2 years, you can usually get out of it. So, but we shall see. If he loses against Indy and looks terrible and throws, 3 interceptions and fumbles every time someone whispers at him, and then no, you got to go in a different direction. But either way, this team, I doubt these guys are staying on as coaches, so hopefully these players do play for the coaches that are there, because there will be a new coaching staff next year. Now, who will be the new coaching staff? We'll see. Mark Davis obviously will be interviewing people, but I don't think he wants that out in public right now, especially while the Raiders are still in the mix. But I know Todd Bowles is a name. Obviously, John Gruden likes Todd Bowles. That's obviously a suggestion. Raheem Morris is another one that's obviously John Gruden likes. It's probably going to be someone John Gruden likes. Let's not pretend that John Gruden doesn't talk to any of these players. He still talks to Derek Carr. He still talks to Mark Davis. He's he's basically like the shadow GM, in my opinion. He's probably not, he's letting the coaches do their own thing. We all know that. But as far as some plays that I'm pretty I would be willing to bet money that when he talks to Derek Carr every week, he says, hey, you should try out this play. In fact, the play they used to seal the game against Denver was a play they used before. They used that play, I think, like 3 times before to end games, too. But it was Darren Waller who did it. And I think one time it was Foster Moreau who ended the game. But that play has been used before. And, let's see. The good news is Raiders are still in the mix. Who would have thought, after those terrible games they had where they lost. The Raiders are 8-7 right now. They were 7-7. Some of those games they lost, were terrible. They should have won. They really should have won some of those games. Some of these games just, you go back to that New York Giants game. How do you lose that Derek Carr? Derek Carr played like terrible. Then you get smoked by the Chiefs. Then you get smoked by the Bengals. Then you follow that up with a great victory against the Cowboys. But then Derek Carr goes back to playing like garbage for 2 weeks and loses against Washington and then Kansas City. But he's on a 2-game winning streak right now against the Browns and the Broncos. Now, remember, The Browns had Nick Mullins as their quarterback, and, they had a lot of guys out, and then they just played against Drew Lock. It's a lot different competition in Indianapolis, but we need to see this guy deliver. And I don't buy the whole thing he doesn't have weapons, because I guarantee you if you gave, Aaron Rodgers those weapons, Tom Brady those weapons, the top quarterbacks in the NFL, okay, they would be just fine with those weapons. Those guys are pretty good that he has. They are. And if Josh Jacobs can start running the ball, because this guy's been driving me crazy, and hold on to the ball, because he hasn't had a good season. He's looking like a one-year wonder to me right now. Maybe he's just getting going. And if he's just getting going and he can start running for 127 yards for the rest of the year, last 2 games, the Raiders stand a chance against the Colts if he can run like that. They stand a chance against the Chargers if he can run like that. We shall see. Colts, Raiders, playoff game. Do the Raiders have the heart? Will they get players back off of the COVID list and help them try to seal a victory? The Colts have their own guys on their COVID list. Let the COVID stay in the Indy locker room and let the Raiders get off of the COVID, and just maybe, we can get a miracle. And for one more week, the Raiders will be in the mix, and we'll talk about that last game, that Week 18 game that might determine, depending on what happens to the Colts, if the Raiders do pull off a miracle, that last game will determine if the Raiders are going in the playoffs or if they are once again not going. They're going to be sitting home watching from the couch. And I think that will I think a lot of decisions will be made, by the way, on that. So we shall wait and see what happens. But for right now, Raider Nation, go celebrate. You're still in the mix. The Raiders are not dead yet, and we got a playoff game coming up against the Indianapolis Colts. My name is Stephen Michaels. If you like this show, please support it. You can support it on Venmo. It's at the Raiders Daily Podcast. I really appreciate it. More people donate, more people support this content, the more shows I can do. So please support the show. I will see you guys next week as we recap this Colts-Raiders game. Let's see what happens. Can the Raiders do it? We'll find out. Stephen Michaels, I am out. This is the #1 podcast, Raiders podcast in the world, the Raiders Daily.